I get the question all the time, like, how do you end human trafficking? I'll give you a one-word answer and then I'll expand.
Okay.
Consent. Teach your children about consent. I'll tell you that 99% of the clients I've supported, and again, I've worked with probably over 1,000 survivors of domestic human trafficking in my career, they all tell me, Carly, I said yes. And I said, no, you didn't. And they're like, no, I said those words, yes, so I consented. I said, well, let me teach you about the definition of consent, because what you learned in school was wrong. It is an incredibly nuanced definition. It doesn't, yes means yes and no means no is not the definition of consent. You cannot give consent under any sort of pressure. So if someone promises you something in return, or if someone says, it would really mean a lot to me if you said yes, or this is what we could do if you said yes, it negates the yes. Most people don't know that.
No.
That's really the definition. There's also other elements that need to be present in order for consent to exist. So for example, you cannot give consent. So number one, you can't give consent under pressure, any sort of pressure. You can't give consent under any sort of influence. So if you're intoxicated, you cannot give consent, of course. If you're passed out, obviously you cannot give consent. Even if you gave consent before and then you pass out, you did not consent. It has to be willing, and it also has to be ongoing. So let's say you can consent one time and then you assume that that person would be okay with it the next time. That's also completely untrue. Once you equip people with the knowledge of consent, they realize that they're not consenting, and they realize what's happening to them is in fact wrong. They don't know that this is wrong, then they don't feel like they can say anything about it. That's often the case for survivors of domestic human trafficking. They think, well, I said yes to this, so it's my fault. Who's ever going to love me again once I do it once? It's my fault. The shame and blame that they place on themselves is half the battle.